We are going to have two wonderful papers by Sri G.V. Shivakumar ji and Dr. Srijani Bhattacharya. Udaka Tatva is going to be the topic for Sri G.V. Shivakumar ji's paper. Please, Sri G.V. Shivakumar ji, over to you.
Dhanyavad. Namaste and good afternoon to all of you. Firstly, I heartily congratulate all the presenters of the previous sessions. I think the sessions have been extremely insightful and very purposeful. There is a lot that we can take forward from these presentations. So with this, I bow to all my deities and my inspiration, the river Saraswati. It's interesting that today my topic is also Udaka Tattva, and rivers are an important part of the Udaka Tattva. So my topic is Udaka Tattva, the water principle in the Vedas. Next slide, please. So the structure of the presentation is like this. We will walk through the Srinama of water in the Vedas as compiled by Nirukta. Then we'll walk through some of the names of rivers uh, and their meaning as once again presented by Nirukta, but compiled from the Vedas. We will look at it from the standpoint of some patterns, and finally we'll in the last slide we will discuss what those patterns mean from the standpoint of environmentalism. We will then go into the description of the river Sindhu and then the river Saraswati. Very important because there is a lot of philosophy over there. Then we will see the praise of the Almighty, the Bhagavan, Narayana in the Vedas and with water references. We will briefly summarize the Udaka Tattva and look at how and why that Udaka Tattva emerges from these details. But more importantly, and my fundamental, focus these days is we will look at a Purushartha-based architecture for environmentalism in Hinduism as it emerges from some of the descriptions of water from the Udaka Tattva in the Vedas. So we discuss a hypothesis and a template using which we can think of a framework to protect every valuable thing, uh, every valuable thing that today is kind of overutilized by the modern world. What is the perspective and the framework that we require? This is the structure of this presentation. Next slide, please. So you will see there are around 101 names for water in in Vedas as compiled by Nirukta. The reference for this is a book on Veda Samskriti Parichaya by Dr. K.S. Narayanacharya. It is there only in Kannada. It is not there in English. Hope someday we get that in English. And there is it's a compilation of 10 different books that he has written. And one of the books is on Udaka Tattva, and my primary material is coming from the references from the book on Udaka Tattva. So you can see that in the first column, there is a lot of physical description. And in the second column, there are some philosophical descriptions, and that is important. I present this for around 20 plus cases, and then I will just list all the other names. For instance, you see something like Arnaha. It comes from the Rudhatu. It means one which has a flow, But this flow is representing the flow of the universe, which is the Rita. So there is a physical property and there is a corresponding sacred property. This pattern you can see throughout in the description of the water in the Vedas. For example, Vanam is also a name for water in some contexts. Physically, that can translate into everybody needs it. Fundamentally, it is the life holding force of the universe. Madhu is enveloped by clouds, but one that must be worshipped to be understood. That means, the cloud has to go away for you to find the water, for the tattva. So this is one beauty in Bharatiya Parampara. And this is the most important point that I want to highlight in this presentation. That is, there is a physical property for every material has a physical property, but the sages have envisaged a corresponding spiritual property. Look at Salilam flowing, moving from a higher area to lower area, but actually it means it is representing an eternal movement, which once again is Rita. So this dual way of, and this is best represented by water in the Vedas. You can see this pattern throughout, but water is something that is worship like anything, nothing else in the Vedas, apart from, Soma and other things. So from something that is physical that gets this kind of elevated place is absolutely the water. Not for, for obvious reasons, because that is still the physically the most important life holding force, but extracting sacred properties of it. And these sacred properties are not merely imagined and thrust on it. These are the result of enormous tapas of our sages. And this is going to come only from the Shrutis. So this is not going, you cannot, you can experience it but through your ritual performances, but you cannot prove it with the instrumentation of modern science. Hence, it is extremely important that we keep this dual property of every material in mind. Move to the next slide, please. Sorry for my voice, it is not in a good shape. So some more you will see like that. And, so it also has, water also has the word dharunam, which means water holds, but it is the one that is holding the entire universe. Ararindani, one that is given, which also means one that provides wealth that is superior to all other wealth. So that is the philosophical meaning of it. Retaha, extremely important. One that falls uncontrollably, one that floods. But philosophically, it is corresponding to another aspect of Rita, that is consciousness protecting divinity. Thus, so the conscious nature of the consciousness that protects divinity is that it falls uncontrollably when you realize it. So you have to realize it. So that's, you can find around 101 names, and we can move to the next slide, please. So here I have listed 99. Somewhere there are two names with the two same names with different meanings. And I have also highlighted some extremely important names over here. For instance, Vyoma. You see, the name for water is Vyoma, which actually means space, which means it occupies any given space, one that spreads. It also has the meaning, word Ritam sometimes represents water itself. Yoni sometimes represent water because water goes and joins the ocean. Ritasya Yonihi is another philosophical word for that. That means that it is the one where you go and meet the Rita. So it is through water that you will go and meet Rita. So this, whatever pattern that I showed, it can be, extracted for every single word over here. And the important parameter is that the Bharatiya Parampara, through our sages, have extracted, I think extracted word is not good, have seen a, it's a drashta activity, have seen a sacred property of every of for every physical aspect of water. Here in this list, all 100 names, they have a certain physical property. They are describing the physicality. It's also important to know that all these names of water are coming from certain features of water. So this is another unique aspect of Bharatiya Parampara, that names given to an object is coming from its multiple physical features. These many physical features in English you cannot find. You can describe a certain feature of water, but that does not translate itself to become a word itself, which is an aspect of Bharatiya Parampara, because this is our verb to noun phenomenon. The verb to noun phenomenon is to represent a single piece of material in multiple dimensions, multiple ways. So you are viewing the same material with multiple lenses. Finally, for each of those physical lenses, you have an equivalent sacred lens. That is the perspective of Bharatiya Parampara. That is the perspective of material from the Bharatiya Parampara. So the perspective of material is what I want to highlight through the Srinamas of water. Next slide, please. Now let us see the Sri Ramas of Nadi. So my favorite slide, it will be, it is, this is. So around 37 names are given. Avanayaha, Yahyaha, Khaha means digging the earth. Srotyaha, with a flood. Enyaha, Gamanasvabhava. So take a look at this. So you will see multiple words with meaning gamana, gamana shila, gamana swabhava, which means that the flow of the water is a conscious flow. That is what is emerging from that. So it carries, it so this is a spiritual perspective of the river. Otherwise, you look at it as a mere flow, a physical flow. But everything in Bharatiya Parampara must serve the purpose of uh, the sacred, the divinity. And the divinity must emerge naturally from the physical property. And the critical physical property of river, which is flowing, which is the natural property of water also. And that is that has translated into names for the river, which has a spiritual dimension, and that is Gamanasvabhava. And that is why meditation, on the banks of the river, which means there is, see, this is an extremely important Udaka Tatva. In Bharatiya Parampara, Srishti in and Sthiti go together. Srishti works for Sthiti, and that is appearing here. The water flows, which is a dynamic, which is a movement, it creates a srishti. But it is a self-conscious srishti, and its ability to see itself. Our ability to see ourselves, our own flow within, it is reflecting that. And hence the flow of the river corresponds to Rita, which is nothing but srishti being subordinated to Riti, or the sthiti, srishti going along with sthiti. So the rivers are all, gamanashilatva of the river translates into we reflecting ourselves and the universe, and being one with the universe along with the river. So the rhythm of the river is helps us in we becoming one with the universe. So you can see multiple meanings of the word, and 37 names, so many of them derived from the word flow, but each word is very, very different. Some words are very physical with strength. Urjasvayatyaha. Some are like, payasvayatyaha, worthy of drinking. But that translates into becoming a tirtha. And that is what is extremely important here. So through this, I also want to prevail upon the Sanatanis to look at the names of everything that is there in the Sanskrit world with this duality of physical property and the corresponding sacred properties. So the names and even the dhatus are very naturally emerging. This naturality is the most important thing. That is, the names, even the words, are emerging with a certain scientific structure, which is a combination of Iha and Para. If only Iha was there, the environmentalism would not have emerged. Because Para is integrated with it, there is environmentalism, and we'll see that in the last slide. Next slide, please. So some more names of the rivers and their meaning. Ganga, Yamuna, you can see that all of them have a corresponding, characteristic of flow. Yamuna flows quietly. Ganga flows forever. It represents eternity. Yamuna flows quietly. It represents enchanting. So the physical property of the river has translated it into the name, and that translates into a spiritual culture that develops on the banks of the river. And you can see that everywhere. With a star, it means one with great flow and banks. So great flow is what it represents. Saraswati represents ones that flows in fulsome and wholesome. That is the Rita Swarupa river in Bharatiya Parampara, and that is why the Vedic culture evolved on the banks of river Saraswati. Next slide, please. So the description of river Sindhu, I'll quickly move because I will lose time otherwise. River Sindhu, all the descriptions are fundamentally the description of Rita Pravaha itself, the universal flow of the flow of the cosmic universe. And Sindhu is, as many of you will know, is used both to represent the river Sindhu as well as the concept of moving water Sindhu itself, river itself. So your flow is constant with the same speed, spreading with tejas all side. Straight flow, white colored, bright, without any trouble. You your flowing is your karma. So that is a reflection of the universe, because universe's nature is a sthiti, and sthiti is nothing but being dynamic yet being in the equilibrium at all points of time. So thus you can see in the description of water and its many forms, you can see a reflection of its sacred properties, which are all pointing to the Rita Pravaha of the very universe itself, which means the sages have envisaged, have seen the rhythm of the universe, the dynamic of the universe being reflected in the flow of river and hence in the water itself. So the water is not just a physically a physically essential commodity for us, but it is also spiritually essential for us to be one with the universe. And we will see what that translates to. Next slide, please. Similar description of river Saraswati, and wherever Sindhu's description is of universal river, it is very similar to that of river Saraswati. Wherever it is specifically referring to river Sindhu, then it is different. She is full of truth. She fulfills all our desires. She gives cows. She has cows. River of so Aurobindo clearly says that she is the river of inspiration flowing from the truth consciousness. So in the secret of the Vedas, he dwells with it, in great detail. So this is how Bharati Parampara saw water. Now, when you see it from these dimensions, your want to protect will be very, very high. Next slide, please. So some Upanishad Vakya praising Bhagavan. And you can see that Salilam, Apova, Tajjalaniti, Apo, all these are very, very clearly, describing the Bhagavan in terms of water. So, and the last one is important. Apo Nara iti Narayana. So Narayana is Naranam Ayanam Asau. Narayana is also Nara Eva Ayanam Yasya Saha, which means that one who where all waters reside inside him, also one where one who resides in water. So this is important, this duality is important. And this is what saves Antarbahishcha Tatsarvam Vyapya Narayana Sthitaha is also reflected in these two things, where his Vasasthana is Nara. At the same time, all Naras are inside him. So that this is the and Nara, one of the meanings of Nara is water. So the whole universe has been imagined as being filled with water, and that is the Kshetrasagara too. Next slide, please. So with this, we will just summarize the Udaka Tattva. And there's one sukta which is very, very, very important. Divya Sukta, Rigveda 1.2, You can see some good references over there. It consists of a lot of divinity related aspects, and water is also there in that. In that, water is described as, pavana, as consisting of medicinal properties. One that brings the dead alive, the Amrita Shakti. One that has consciousness protecting ability, which is Agni Shakti. One that is the reason for the Dirghayushya Shakti. One that is Papa Nivarana, and this is the most important thing. A material that cleanses us of our Papa is something that is a unique feature of Bharatiya Parampara. And this ability to clean ourselves continuously and not become eternal sinners is something that has differentiated our culture. And this Papa Nivarana Shakti of water has ensured that we protect it, because you want to protect something that will cleanse your cells. And it is Nityanutanatva of the water. It is always new. It is Rita Pravaha representing. So all these properties that we see in the Shrinamas of water are very well summarized in the Divya Sukta of Rigveda. And what is all this? Also, another important aspect is this. I do not have enough time to cover this, but I will highlight it. This spiritual dimension of water is not just stated but explained in the relationship between Indra and Udaka, Soma and Udaka, Soma and Parjanya Devata and rain. There is a very beautiful Manduka Sukta, which the Westerners have misinterpreted, but it represents certain spiritual dimensions of water. Relationship with Udaka and Prajapati. Centrality of Udaka Tattva in every Arya Samskara, such as Snana, Achamana, Sandhyopasana, Punyaha Vachana. Most of us who are doing Sandhyavandana, you will know, it starts, the whole, apart from Achamana itself, it starts with, Apohishtamayohostana or Jedadatana, and the water becomes extremely central to everything that you do in Bharatiya Parampara. And apart from Punyaha Vachana, even innumerable number of other performances also. And Snana itself is very, very detailedly explained. Now we'll come to the last part of the presentation. Next slide, please. So this is a framework that I am evolving. And what it summarizes is that the Purushartha perspective of Bharatiya Parampara is what is helping us organize this very, very well. As you can see, everything must be part of our Artha, everything must be part of our Kama, everything must be placed in accordance to Dharma, And everything must be part of our seeking the divine, that is the mukti. This is the architecture of Bharatiya Parampara. What happens because of this? Because of this, if everything must be part of our artha, which means everything must continue to serve our existence, everything is used in our srishti for our protection. Everything is used in our srishti to not just serve our individual purpose, but universe's purpose also. Everything must be desired, but in a unique fashion. This is extremely important. Everything is used to satisfy our desires, but in accordance to dharma that brings balance. Everything is found a rightful place. Nothing is rejected, but nothing is pushed beyond its limit. No vastu or usage is allowed to grow in a way that hurts the other. Now coming to the divinity, the fact that everything must be part of our seeking the divine ensures that the divinity in everything must be recognized. Only then that is possible. Everything is part of our sacred journey. These two dimensions is what makes Bharatiya Parampara significantly different. Why is that so? So the divinity in everything, if you have to recognize, then everything must have sacred properties along with natural properties, which is what we saw in the previous slides. Not just that, everything is a divine living being. When everything becomes divine, then everything is part of our community as a community member. So we have a personal relationship, cultural relationship with water. We have a personal cultural relationship with parvatas. It's not an object that is outside of you that you will only use. You have to we develop a relationship, and we naturally develop that relationship. Everything is part of our sacred rituals, which means what? If water has to become part of our sacred rituals, then we strive to retain the material in all its purity. Whatever is not part of our sacred rituals, we will tend to not protect it in its purity. And because everything at some stage becomes part of our sacred rituals, Parvata is part of our sacred ritual in some way, Bhumi is part of our sacred ritual in some way, due to which there is a natural proclivity for us to protect. So protection comes as a consequence. Environmentalism comes as a consequence of the sacred dimension of Bharatiya Parampara. So with this, I come to the end of my presentation. So my objective was to describe the, uh, multidimensional description of water in Bharatiya Parampara, and through that demonstrate how the Purushartha architecture create. I did not have enough time to go through the Artha, Kama, Dharma dimensions. A similar framework is there, but how the sacred dimension keeps a control on the because there is a sacred is corresponding to the material and not outside of the material. It has ways and means of controlling the way we use things, and environmentalism becomes a natural outcome of that. Dhanyavad.
Thank you very much, Shivakumar ji.